entitlements because of their birth. You know any Christians that feel entitled? They feel as though the blessings of God are theirs by birthright. That it doesn't matter what they do, it doesn't matter how they live, it doesn't matter what they're seeking first, they're entitled. Now, Jacob thought he was entitled because his mother had a dream that said that he would be the stronger, that he would be the master of his brother. And so it was his intention by his own cunning devisings. In fact, it wasn't even his idea, but he received this wrong idea that by his own efforts, by his own cunning deceit, that he could gain the desired end. Do you know anybody who's trying to be saved by their own works? Now, Esau, on the other hand, was indifferent to the things of God. Esau didn't give the eternal things a second thought. Esau lived in the present, brothers and sisters. He couldn't see afar off. You remember Hebrews chapter 11 where it says that Jacob and all the other patriarchs, that they were able to see afar off. They lived in the future in their minds. Amen? They could look past the immediate pleasurable things to something far more valuable. Amen. There's a lesson in this, brothers and sisters, that as dangerous as it is to seek one's salvation by works, indifference is even more dangerous. Are you hearing me, brothers and sisters? Indifference, Laodiceans, is even more dangerous. Is that not how God describes the Laodicean, us in these last days? Rich and increased with goods, in need of nothing. Lukewarm. Does that sound like indifference to you? Can you imagine that? That in some respects, Esau has more parallels with the Laodicean condition that we're in than Jacob does. Indifference, brothers and sisters. Taking the gifts of God, taking the responsibilities that we have to God for granted. Verse 28, and Isaac loved Esau because he did eat his venison. You know, sometimes, brothers and sisters, we can encourage people in the wrong path. Can you imagine that? By flattery, by enabling. You know, it's almost like with an addict, they talk about codependence, the enablers. Spiritually speaking, brothers and sisters, many of us have had, even if we've never done a drug in our lives, we've had enablers. Rather than Isaac confronting his son and saying, son, we need to get back on track. We need to get our focus back. He was living vicariously through his son. He wouldn't do it himself, but he enjoyed it vicariously. Isn't that true that so many of the young ladies today, they seem attracted to the rebel? They don't necessarily want to do all the bad things that the bad boys do, but they just want to enjoy, they want to be close so they can kind of enjoy the exciting tales of daring do. Brothers and sisters, this same kind of thing happens amongst God's people. We won't necessarily do the things, but we'll watch it on TV and enjoy it vicariously. We don't believe in murder, but we'll cheer when a murder takes place. We won't cheat on our spouse, but we'll gain a very small thrill from watching someone else cheat. Wow, we're coming to the heavy parts, brothers and sisters. We read verse 27 and 28. Verse 29, and Jacob sowed pottage And Esau came from the field and was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with that red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. Can you imagine that? You know what Edom means? Edom means red. Years later, some 20 years later, Jacob would get his name changed as a memorial of his being an overcomer with God, as a memorial of him finally tapping into what is truly strength. He humbled himself before God. That's why Jacob was stronger than Esau. A lot of people, when you read that story about Jacob saying, Lord, I will not let you go until you bless me, they really think that Jacob was saying, I'm going to overpower God. But that's not what he was saying, brothers and sisters. He was saying, if I let you go, I'm lost. If I let you go, I have no hope. His strength, brothers and sisters, was that he knew that he must have God. He must have God's blessing. He knew that it was not anymore by his own creative plan, but by following the plan of God and waiting on the Lord. Amen. He looked with remorse, brothers and sisters. Remember that night before he came to meet with his brother? He looked with remorse that he had been used by the devil to sabotage his brother. Can you imagine that? When he heard those stories from his mother about the dream that she had about the two of them, he should have been trying to help his older brother. He should have said, peradventure, God will have mercy. But rather than aiding his brother, he became a stumbling block, a heel grabber. But remember that we're talking about Esau. Esau, even though he had his heel grabbed, if you read the book of Obadiah, God didn't accept that as an excuse. Are you hearing what I'm saying? You're hearing what the Lord's saying. Brothers and sisters, it will not be a sufficient excuse to say that I was turned off to the things of God by the legalists. Oh, when I was young, they used to beat me over the head with Ellen White. You ever heard that? Esau, have you heard that? Brothers and sisters, that's not going to be sufficient excuse because you are not Jacob's servant. You are God's servant. Amen. You don't rise and fall by what Jacob does. You have a choice to make. The provisions of redemption are available to everybody. But the results of redemption, brothers and sisters, are up to you and I. We must choose to perfect holiness in the fear of God. We must choose to work out our own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works within us to will and do of his own pleasure. But he's like that image we have of Jesus knocking on heart's door. He's a gentleman. He will not barge in. And some of us mistake this not barging in as if God's holiness and his justice will change. He will not force you to serve him, but if you choose not to serve him, brothers and sisters, you have chosen death. To choose anything other than Jesus. And that's really what we're talking about here. When Jacob and Esau were young men, Jacob wanted to be in the line of Jesus. It consumed his thoughts. Esau had no interest in that. All he wanted was the present blessing of inheriting his father's legacy. Do you know that that exists in the church of God? That some people are here because they really believe that there is a magic trick in the tithe and offerings. And if I appear to hang on the fringes of God's church, then I will get blessings. There are whole religious movements in the world today, brothers and sisters, where they're saying, name it and claim it. Just send us $1,000, 100-fold. And millions are perishing in the condition of Esau, brothers and sisters, trying to buy their way into heaven. Or rather, the condition of Esau is thinking that you can just enter into the family of God and be indifferent to the work and the cause and the responsibility, the mission, the role that God has given us to play in the salvation of men. We think we can just stand idly by and that we're still entitled to the blessings. And you know what's interesting? Esau actually got what he wanted. Have you ever thought of that? Jacob went away for 20 years. When they re-met, Jacob didn't try to take back what was rightfully his. All of the flocks and the various things that Esau had inherited from Isaac, Jacob let him keep them. So he had what he wanted, brothers and sisters. Be careful you get what you want. And that's why it's so important to want the right things. Amen. Be careful you get what you want, brothers and sisters. Pray to God to give you His